Good morning, fellow storytellers. Today, we're going to step into the future while actually firmly planting our feet in the present. We're going to journey through the dark, enthralling alleys of the thriller genre, aided by a tool that is revolutionary, yet fundamentally just that, a tool. This is artificial intelligence. It does not think, it doesn't feel, it doesn't create, at least not in the way that you and I do. Instead, AI is a reflection of the data that it has been fed, a mirror that kind of bounces back the creative energies that we actually impart or project onto it. In this session, we're going to harness AI not as a replacement for our own ingenuity, but as an amplifier to our own unique voices. So when somebody asks you, what kind of writing are you doing today? You are first and foremost an author. If you are writing a book, if you have written books with or without AI, you are a writer. The only difference is that some writers choose to write without AI assistance, and some people like to use the AI assistance. It's no different than when, say, Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid or some of those other tools came out that were nice resources for writers. Today, we now have AI assistance, and that tool is just phenomenal when used in the right hands. It enables an author to go in and brainstorm. It allows you to go off in different avenues to find out which thread or which direction you like. It allows you to evaluate, to look at the pros and cons of the direction of the story that you are moving into. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's session. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, so give me just a moment. Now, while I'm doing that, are there certain things that you are having a hard time with, at least any of you attendees, that you're having a hard time with whenever you are working with the AI or looking to generate ideas or create your premise from that very core beginning? Are there areas that kind of stump you? I can definitely say I, for one, find that I am actually stumped at times when I go in and I start playing with, say, a project. Say I want to create a thriller. Now, I am a seasoned writer, so I do know what a thriller is. But what if I want to know more information about that thriller? What if I want to know at the very base what that thriller is about? Or what if I want to know about different subgenres of the thrillers? I like to actually go in and pull up information pertaining to my genre of choice. So, what is a thriller? What are the subgenres? We all think about thrillers like, say, Silence of the Lambs. We might think of Psycho. We might think of Michael Myers. We might even think of anything to do with, say, murder mysteries. We might think about maybe an alien predator type movie that's thrilling. So let's take a look at the different things that are constituted as thrillers. To do this, I am going to go inside of chat and we're just going to ask that question. What are thrillers? List the main thrillers in the genre. So we know that our thriller should have suspense, it should have tension, it should have some heightened emotions. We know that all of that takes place. We know that we have psychological thrillers, we have crime thrillers, we have spy thrillers. So in the chat, if you are a thriller writer, can you specify which area that you tend to write in? Is it psychological, crime, spy, legal, medical, action, techno? What area of thrillers do you write in? Are you a military thriller writer? Supernatural thriller? What areas within the thriller genre do you write? I'm pulling up the chat here. So I see a few here. So we have a person who writes spy, one who writes sci-fi. Let's see, domestic or psych, political thriller, psychological, legal, action or pulp. Very nice. Somebody else said psychological, supernatural, psychological again, mystery, hard-boiled, very nice. Crime, romantic, supernatural, psychological again, crime, sci-fi. Today, I want to pick one of these. Let's take a look at one of these, since psychological thriller kept coming up multiple times, we're going to go ahead and pick number 1. Now, does that mean that I'm going to plot the whole thing right here inside of Chat? I could do that. I could also plot inside of Sudowrite Story Engine. I do find that if I'm going to plot inside of Sudowrite Story Engine, one of the things that I like to do in there is actually use the plotting inside of, I'd say, the outline area. I have played around with doing the revision section of Story Engine, and when I'm in that revision for the synopsis, it cuts off my content because if I am inside of Story Engine and I'm trying to use Story Engine, I'm limited. I'm limited to the 800 words in the synopsis. But the problem with that is usually my synopsis will not hit 800 words whenever I'm generating it within Sudowrite. Now, I can definitely, rather than use the brain dump, I can come in and use the rewrite section and I can give it specific instructions. But I did find that I tend to like to feed information into the outline if I am inside of Sudowrite Story Engine. Now, one of the other things that I like to do is use templates. So say I want to write something and I'm not sure what I want to write, but I know that I have a couple of templates, then I can definitely go and look at one of my templates to see what it is that I want to write. So I can actually go to my thrillers and I can pull that body of work up. I have a manuscript that I'm working currently on thrillers. So I do have a few here, and I have an academic thriller, I have an action thriller, I have an adventure thriller, an alien. But let's go down and look at the psychological. So you notice I don't have much in here right now. I only have, I think, about 126 different ones that I am plotting out, but each one gives me a different, unique story. Now, if I want to make it even more original, one of the things that I can do is give it additional information. The prompts that I like to use are very generic in nature, and it can give me some ideas, but I tend to like to add additional details in there. So I'm going to take this prompt and I'm going to go ahead and load it into my chat window. And I will share this. I'll actually share the link to this chat with y'all. Now, without me adding anything at all to it, just with it understanding that it is a psychological thriller, I'm going to go ahead and send that off. And it gives me something. Now, it gives me enough to play with and look at the flow of it. And so somebody just said that they're always wrestling with a workflow. And a workflow differs from person to person, and you have to find what that little niche that works for you. As a writer, I can tell you that each time I sit down to write a brand new body, even if it's within the same series that I'm writing in, I often find that I need to change up my process. My workflow may change from book to book. It doesn't mean that my first workflow was flawed. It just means that there may be other elements that my book is needing me to focus on. So as you can see, this gave me a little bit of information. It let me know what the tone was. It let me know the theme. It is setting it up for a coastal town in Oregon. It is giving me a local police department as a backdrop, a psychiatric institution with a haunting history. I can explore any of those items. Now, how did it pull up this information? It pulled up this information by taking a look at the psychological thriller genre and what all that entails. It also looked at popular tropes and themes within the genre at a broad view. It then took some of those, wrapped it up into a story idea that I can fully flesh out. Now, what if I don't want to use parts of this? What if I want to go in and play with this and maybe I want to change the story in itself? Maybe I want to add that there is an underground element of crime. Maybe there is a crime syndicate there, and maybe I have a new sheriff in town who is not privy to all of that. I can actually ingrain this information in here. We already know Sorry, didn't mean to go so fast. We have our world building, we have our setting, we have a backdrop. Remember, this is in Oregon, but is Oregon where I really want it? What if I want to have something in Texas? I'm going to change the town and state. Now we have trope shown here, which is mind games, twisted psyche, unhinged detective. Now, I like that there's an unhinged detective. We could actually play with that. We have some motifs, like the idea of the motifs. We have symbolism, and it does give me information. I know that Michael returns, but I want a little bit more information in here that I want to layer. So, how am I going to do that? I just took a look at who Michael is. I know that he's confronted by a disturbing murder case and he's grappling with haunting memories. So, what if Michael left Texas and he has become a detective, a big shot detective in, say, New York or somewhere else, and maybe one of his caseloads got him in trouble and his hand got slapped. So they sent him to Texas. And while he's in Texas and he's back on his stomping grounds, what if he was part of the underground element before he left and went to school and became a detective? That could add an additional layer to my story. So you see how I'm beginning to look at the story. I'm changing elements of it because I'm the director of the story. The AI is not directing me. Now, the AI can give me some cool ideas, some cool thoughts, but in the end, it's my story and it's my job to decide what that story looks like. Now, we do have the main character. We know that Michael is an INTJ. I like to use the Myers-Briggs because it gives me, at a quick glance, it tells me exactly what kind of character Michael is because I'm very familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality types. It gives me his motivations, goals, strengths. All of these are vague right now, and they are not fully fleshed out. I also have supporting character. I have the antagonistic force. There's a master manipulator with knowledge of Michael's past. So, with that extra layer of me saying that he used to be part of that underground crime organization, this is somebody from his past. I don't know who it is yet, but I'm thinking that maybe it's somebody that he went to school with that maybe feels left behind, somebody that felt betrayed when he left. So let's play with it. We also have some foreshadowing with the narrative devices. We have twists. We have some recurring elements. We have some dreams, maybe with the sessions with Dr. Bennett. And I would need to really look at what those dream sessions are. Are they repressed memories? Are they dreams that he's having because he feels trapped in the life that he's in? Those are all questions that I need to answer as the author. We have our main plot point. We have a subplot point, storylines A, B, and C. Now, these are going to change when I feed the additional information into ChatGPT 4. We have our storytelling enhancements. We have pacing. We have cliffhangers. Now, if there's something in there that you don't like about the cliffhangers, then we can definitely go in and we can make those changes. Now, I do want to let all of you know that I will have a little mini PDF for all of y'all that I will go ahead and post in Slack as well as in my Discord group so that y'all can go and grab that. And I will have maybe about 10, 15 different templates that y'all can play with, just so that y'all can take those thriller templates into ChatGPT. You can take them into Sudowrite. You can take them into Claude. And that way you can play around with them and get a good feel for how the template works and some of the items that are in there. And you can remove items, you can add items, and the template will be available as well. So, what did I say? I want Michael. Michael was a top detective in New York. He got wrapped up in a case where he walked the line between criminal and straight arrow. Now, because he didn't go over into the criminal activity, but he walked that line and maybe there was some ambiguous stuff that happened. His hand got slapped. So we're sending him. He was, let's say, his hand was slapped and he was sent to Texas. So I want to make him somebody who really cares about the people, about the victims. I'm going to give him a backstory. So we need a backstory. Maybe when he was young and part of that underground organization or that criminal element, maybe he had a cousin or a niece or a little sister or a little brother who maybe was killed in some crossfire. So I'm going to state that this is backstory. And I'm going to say both were headed down the path of organized crime. That's organized crime, and we will say, as in gang activity, his cousin's death made him want something different. Now, we know that he's going to end up in Texas. And because he is in Texas, let's have some type of a murder. Or we can even have murder with trafficking, or maybe he's being sent over as a detective to handle a case, and maybe he busts somebody who is a high ranking cartel member, and maybe that cartel member gets mad at him. And because that person is incarcerated right now and is being transferred from the jail in, say, a Texas town, let's say Houston, and is being transferred to an undisclosed location, let's have him be the detective. And maybe that starts a lot of rift between him and the cartel. Now, what if one of the members of the cartel that has moved up over time, what if that individual knows him from the past? And maybe that individual kind of blames him for his cousin's death. That maybe if he had been willing to use a gun or join in a robbery or whatever it is that led to the cousin's death, that maybe that individual feels that it is Michael's fault. So that is one more layer that could potentially out him. Now, what if there is something that individual kept? Maybe Michael was part of a burglary gone wrong. Maybe there's evidence left that could, and now Michael has his whole life, his whole career is at stake. He now has the mafia after him. He's already been in trouble at work for skirting that line. Are there any other elements that y'all can think of at this point? This is how I brainstorm. This is my process. This is what I do before I even ask it to evaluate a piece for me. Nicole or Lynn or Manon, are there any questions?
No questions, but Tomas just posted an idea. What if guy in jail tells task force he'll cooperate, but only with Michael to put him in a dangerous situation?
Okay, I like that. Thinking about ways that you can actually move your characters into peril is a great way to enhance things. It raises those stakes. The comment was, what if the guy in jail and that guy, someone Michael knew in from his childhood, from his teen years, tells task force he'll cooperate, but only with Michael, to put him in a dangerous situation of having to hide his past and secure his future. Now, let's say there are, so the under the crime organization, let's give them, so the crime organization has multiple avenues of business. They do, let's say, they traffic drugs, people, weapons, and anything that can turn a book, including information. Let's say they own some of the officials in Houston, Texas. Let's say a large drug bust gone wrong is what lands the, let's see, which is what lands the cartel member in jail. So this is some of the information that I'm going to be playing with. Okay, so it says with corrupt task force members. Okay, we could have corrupt task force members. And let's see, and we want to tie into colonies being financed north of Houston.
Miracle, John.
Marigold,
Uh-huh. Huh?
right where you're typing, where you say a large drug bust gone wrong, you forgot to put in wrong. Will that tell up anything?
A large drug bust. Oh, gone. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Wrong is what lands the cartel member in jail. Note their corrupt task force members ties into colonies being financed north of Houston and connections. So let's see what this does. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do, generally, I will do all this brainstorming. I'll actually do it inside of a Word document because sometimes the system will go down and you will lose everything you just typed. So I'm going to go ahead and hit send. Shadows of the Past. I'm not crazy about that title, but it's a working title for now. The tagline is in the heart of Texas, the past isn't buried, it's waiting. So that's interesting. That could be a cool. It is gritty, suspenseful with a Southern Gothic atmosphere laden with tension. Now, do you see just that little bit of information that I gave the AI? It completely changed my story. So this is one of the things that I like to do whenever I'm going back and forth. If there are any details that I'm not sure about, then I will keep asking the AI over and over again. Now, one of the things that I do to do is I will actually go in and grab a couple of my prompts, which again, I will share those prompts. They are the same prompts that I used yesterday. And right now, I'm going to ask the AI to evaluate what we have just come up with. It is still working. We have our red herrings coming up. We have our narrative devices. Now, we see that there is a personal vendetta. So that is another layer. So think of your story as that onion or that onion bloom. And every time we learn something about the story or the reader learns something, it needs to be like an onion that's being peeled back. We need to have multiple things going on in our book so that it's not a flat story. We need to make sure that there are enough obstacles, enough conflicts. We need to make sure that things are not easy for Michael. We need him to be dragged through hell and back again. And we need to make sure that we do it in a way that the readers can relate to him. And even though he may have done some bad things in his past, he has done some good things in his present day. What he has done that's good now, does that outweigh what he may have done in the past? Or is what he did in the past really not as bad as what he thinks it is? Maybe he really wasn't the reason that his cousin died. I don't know that yet because you know what? I haven't fully fleshed that out yet. But that is something that I have to do as a writer before this ever goes into generation or is written. So let's take a look at the evaluation. Asks it to look for any weak or vague or problem areas to strengthen in the overall concept so that we could have a well-developed storyline. Now, does that mean that it's going to be 100% perfect? No. It means that we are just going to take a look at some specific areas. I have a couple of prompts that I like to go through, and then I have the AI generate an extended synopsis. Right now, what it has given me within this framework is just a very general outline. It's given me a starting point, but this is by no means ready to be generated into an outline. So what this information has given me is a little bit more information about Michael. So now I know what Michael looks like, and I can set that description to the side so that I constantly have this image of him. Now, do I want him to have a scar? I don't know. I could write that in, but I often notice that the AI keeps wanting to give everybody a scar. I don't know why, but it might work in this one. Now, this faded silver chain around his neck, being a memento from his cousin, that could be the one thing that ties him back to the past. And maybe it is something that people will remember. Maybe it is something that the cousin gave him, and maybe the cousin has it on in a picture. Maybe there's an odd connection there. I don't know yet. I have to finish fleshing this out. So he's seeking redemption for his cousin's death, and he wants to purge Houston of corruption, and he wants to reconcile his past. Now, if I trusted the AI to do all this, that could be great. But I don't trust that the AI could handle this level of information without instruction. How do I know that the AI would actually put in the information that I want? I don't. That's why I have to direct it. So again, you see some other characters. I do have a love interest. Now, keep in mind, you don't have to have a love interest in your book. You could have just a straight up psychological thriller. You don't have to have any romance in it. It's just that anything that I tend to write, I like to have some type of a romantic element to it because the name that I put my thrillers under, it does have romance in it. Now, that doesn't mean that romance is the first genre that I write in. It is actually a thriller that has romantic threads to it. Now, that's different than having a romance book that might have some thriller threads. If it is a romance, then if you took the romance away, there would be no story. If it is a thriller and you take the thriller aspect of it away, then there would be no story. Then you know that you truly have a thriller. So in this case, with my thriller, if I were to take out that romantic thread, I would still have my thriller book. So this truly is going to be a thriller because I don't have to layer in that romantic involvement in order for my story to move forward. I do have an antagonistic force. I know who that is, what that person looks like. Tattoo of a snake wrapped around a dagger. That's pretty common. I might want to change that up. We know what this individual, his descriptor words are. He's domineering, he's vengeful, ambitious, ruthless. So this is somebody that Michael is going to butt heads with. And then we have our archetypes. Now, yesterday I talked about these archetypes and why they were important. These are people that come in and out of Michael's life. We have Grace, who is a mentor. She is a retired detective. Maybe this individual is retired and was injured in the line of duty. Maybe this is somebody who has clues to a case and he has to go and interview her because maybe some of the information in this past case, maybe she was the lead investigator and he goes back to talk to her and she becomes a mentor. That's all stuff that I can layer into my story. We have Carlos, who is a sidekick. He is a trusted ally in the force. Now, does that mean that he's another detective? Sure. But is he a detective or is he a CI? I don't know. Yes, I was just asked if the template will be in Slack with tips and tricks and the video. Yes, just like I posted yesterday, I will do the same thing with this documentation as well. So as you can see, we have different types of characters. Now, just because it says a shapeshifter, it doesn't mean that this is a paranormal and the person is going to change from human to wolf or wolf to human. It just means that this person may not be who they are at. This person might be somebody that has unclear allegiances, and maybe that person's ulterior motive can undermine what the protagonist is doing. Now, we do have the temptress, we have the guardian, we have a threshold guardian. So we have all these individuals. Now, one of the ones that I like is the trickster. especially when you're doing a thriller, because there's always that one person. Okay, do you trust this person or do you not? Sometimes they give you solid information, but sometimes that information has some truths to it. And sometimes it's missing vital pieces of information, which can send the detective off into maybe down a rabbit hole or a wild goose chase. So I definitely would want to play around more with Vince and see what I could do with him. Again, any of these characters are subject to change, at least between now and the time that I have fleshed out my concept 100%. So here we have the plot development. So far, this is where we're at. Michael transitions to Houston. He's involved in a constant confrontation with the city's complex underworld. We definitely want to add that he begins to see that maybe some of the people on the force with him are not on the up and up, but he can't prove that. We can also show that there's some tension and imbalance in the political system within the city itself. We know that there was an initial drug bust. We know that this drug bust has created a lot of chaos, and it just lands right there on the jail floor. And it's going to require them to move the cartel member to avoid people knowing exactly where this person is. There's a mixture of suspense, there is a standoff. So, all of this is good information. But I'm going to ask, what would make this stronger? Give real time examples that impact this story and would add additional depth to it. Now, I had a conversation with my husband not too long ago, and we were talking about different types of crime activity that dated back anywhere from, say, the 1950s to present day. And I was wondering if maybe some of that true to life information, if parts or elements of that could be interesting to play with. Now, there was one case where there was corrupt law enforcement individuals, and they began to have their own little cabal where they were giving orders to the other people within this law enforcement structure to take out some of the criminals that they found that kept slipping through the criminal system or the legal system. So I'd like to layer something like that in here to give it an additional layer, and maybe they're trying to coax Michael into that, but then he's also torn back and forth. So I'd like to see what kind of a layer that would add. Yes, Star Chamber. Let's add an element of, let's add a layer of corruption in the judge and mayor. Do I want it to be the mayor, or who do I want this to be? So let's have, we just want one judge. A judge and senator work together along with a wealthy, let's make it a businesswoman who has connections to the cartel. Now let's have, she gives orders that she takes from a high. So we want this businesswoman to be wrapped in there. And her business kind of keeps her kind of cushioned or away from all this. But we want it to involve some of the judges. Now, this businesswoman, her hands are dirty, but then some of the people that she's working with, they are taking out maybe some of the worst criminals. And even though it looks like she's doing something to benefit the population or the people of Houston or Texas, it's basically to benefit her and her dealings. But yet, the judge and the senator and some of those people think that it's a good way to knock out some of the criminal element. and they're going to tolerate the businesswoman just while they're trying to clean things up. She gives orders that she takes from high ranking cartel bosses to take out people that. So let's see, she raises for veteran causes, so people look the other way. I like that. Very nice. So we can come back, a wealthy businesswoman, we can say, who raises funds, who has connections to the cartel. She gives orders. Let's see, flow sets up times when criminals, marked people are available to be taken out. So let's see if it understands my stream of consciousness here. So it's saying to introduce a recent controversial process, tighter border controls. We can definitely layer some of that content in there, but I don't want to be too close to real life because people read a book to be able to escape everyday life. They want to be entertained. I like the veterans angle. That's really cool. And we do have influence from the media. Now, media could be controlled. So that's another avenue to take a look at. So we could have street protests. We could have public confrontation. So it's giving a lot of topics that we can play with here. And again, I'm going to look at those that will add for entertainment. I'm not looking to pull in what's happening now in any given city. I want to pull something that's going to entertain people. I want to pull something that is going to engage the reader. It needs to feel realistic enough that it will keep them turning those pages, but at the same time, they don't want to have to walk outside and go downtown and actually live the experience because, again, this is entertainment. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to take a look at number 2, number 3, and number 4, and we can take a look at, I'd say 2 through 5, maybe even 6. So let's do that. Add elements of 2 through 6 into the overall concept. And then I want you to do this. So somebody just said that they have a hard time with figuring out the B story, the C story, the A, B, C, D. So think of your storylines as, here, I'm going to open up a new chat. So let's ask chat. So as it's stating in thrillers, you're going to generally have multiple storylines. So keep in mind that your story A is going to be your main plot. B is always your secondary. Now, if you have a romance, B is generally going to be the thread that has the romance, but it can also be some type of a mystery. It can be a relationship, a mentor. It generally consists of that interpersonal relationship. Your C story kind of moves a bit further away from your main plot, and the subplots can offer a different perspective. One of the things that I like to think of is in a thriller, it's maybe your antagonist's backstory. And it removes it a little bit from the plot line, but it still has some type of a connection. Your D, E, and so on are smaller. Those are smaller threads. Those are some of your secondary characters, some of those secondary conflicts that are there. They may not really blow up the content for your main arc, but they're the side things that might help develop some of your side characters, and the things that your side characters do can further develop your characters. How long are my thrillers to support these? Generally, my thrillers are about 30 chapters. I'd say 30 to 45, depending on the content. And then I go ahead and have anywhere, I'd say from 14 to 16 beats per chapter. So they are fairly long. I would say on average, I think one of the shortest ones that I did was maybe 87,000 words, but I do tend to hit about 100,000. maybe 110 generally. And somebody said, I'm thinking chapters and POV. If you have a story B, how to weave into the story. That will come in organically as your story is unfolding. Like I have a B story, and my B story is going to be more the romance. So as my character, Michael, engages with this young lady, it begins to move things forward. How do you get Sudowrite to outline more than 20 chapters? You actually go inside of Sudowrite and ask it to give you that information. Now, I can actually take this information here once I flesh it out, and we can actually go into Story Engine and I can show you how to flesh this out into, say, a 30 beat out into a 30 chapter outline that has summaries in it. If you would like to see that, I can show you that today. So these are all of the different things, and I will share this link with y'all as well. So let's give this a moment to come back up. So now that we are here inside of our story, and I'm telling it that to please proceed with, see, we wanted number 2 through 6, wrap them up into the current concept, then do this. And I'm talking to the AI just very general. One of the things that I am going to ask it to do, remember, we have some additional character information. I am going to consistently give the AI, I'm going to keep asking it to give me my character list because I've made some changes. Now, if you notice, I'm saying that this story takes place over hours to days in some areas and days to weeks in others. I'm doing that because in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to ask it to be very specific on time. Now, with the new additional information, I know that I have this information for Michael. Notice that with the changes that I made, his Myers-Briggs changed. Now, if I don't want that, then I'd go back to have him revert back to the original. But I'm okay with him being the ISTJ at this point. Now, I was okay with him being the other introvert personality type, but I do feel that maybe this kind of bodes better with his personality. This time now, it's making him more determined, gruff, guarded, and it's going to have more of that intelligent, problem solving characteristic that I'm looking for and make him feel very restless. And I want that. Are there any questions right now? Now, we have given the AI a lot of information to think about, a lot of content, but I still need to know a little bit more information. I'm going to ask it to write out a detailed backstory for each one of the main characters. Now, we've already talked about their backstories, right? But we've made other changes. So every time you make a change, you need it to give you that information again. I like to use the AI as a resource. You saw how I was feeding additional information into the AI as I went. Now, one of the things that I do with this specific prompt is that I have to be careful. This does not have any type of magic. It is strictly contemporary. There is nothing in here with spirits. There's nothing in here with magical worlds, mythical creatures. But I want to know if there are any myths, lores, legends, any tales that may be lingering there. But what I am going to do is specify if this is contemporary, historical, sci-fi, fantasy, or paranormal. I am going to state that this is contemporary. It is not historical, sci-fi, fantasy, or paranormal. And I'm going to say, so don't add any, I'm going to ask it to avoid. So avoid anything in the paranormal realm. So it's going to give me my characters, my main characters, but it's going to give me more details about my character. Remember, we talked about how Now, here it's saying that he was born and raised in New York. That is incorrect. Remember, he was born and raised in Texas. So I'm going to have to ask the LLM to correct. So as soon as this finishes, I'm going to go ahead and ask him to update that. I know that, let's see, a dark cloud over his head. So his cousin's death was in Texas. And let's see, I think, and it changed his last name. It keeps changing his last name. So be very conscientious of that. I'm not too worried about the last name right now because I will make sure that before I go forward with this, that I think he was a Rodriguez. Now he's a Martinez. So I'll need to keep an eye on that. So we know that we have this character here. We have this judge. Now, I needed to identify the love interest because I think the love interest name changed. Let's see. They are two different people. Now, you can see how I keep having to go back and forth with it. And that's because, again, if I am not overtly detailed sometimes, it tends to stray and go in another direction. But at the end of the day, it's going to be me who decides what is inside of that outline. And let's see, supporting characters. Now we have a town, but we need to make sure that everything in the town deals with Houston. And then we have some of this information leading them to tragedy or great power. And just because somebody may feel that they are cursed doesn't mean that it has to be magical. They could just be bad luck. So now we have him. His cousin has actually stayed the same all the way through. At this point, I am going to save time. I am going to ask it to give me an extended summary just so that we can take that summary or synopsis into Story Engine because somebody had asked how to flesh out those chapters. I'm going to show you how to do that both here in chat, and I'm also going to show you how to do that inside of Story Engine. But now, do you see how much I've gone back and forth with my story? This is what I do all the time whenever I am playing with this. Somebody asked, will you be able to show us today what you do with everything you did today and how to use it in Sudowrite? Yes, I'm actually going to take this information right now and I am going to have it give me an extended synopsis. And I'm going to take that synopsis and turn it into a chapter outline. And then I'm going to show that outline in both Sudowrite as well as here in GTP4. Now, one of the things that I do want to point out whenever you are working with some of these, make sure that you are keeping your own list of content so that you know where threads are. Now, if you use Blake Snyder, then the AI would know what that template looks like. If you use the Lester Dent mystery, then yes, it understands the Lester Dent. If you use any other format, ask ChatGPT-4 if it knows what that framework looks like. And if it knows it, then you can ask it to give you that type of an outline. If you use your own format, then what you would do is say, write out an extended synopsis for this concept, detailing all the major and minor beats of the story. And then you would just go ahead and state, follow this format. And then right down here below, you would go ahead and paste in whatever your framework looks like. And it would need to be something really generic that just lists what those steps are. And you would paste that in there, and then the AI would go ahead and follow that specific structure. To demo that, I'm going to ask it, use a mashup of, let's say, Blake Snyder's beat sheet. And let's say, and pinpoint the major beats, the save the cat moment, and red herrings. So notice how Blake Snyder uses X, and it is breaking it up to show the opening images. I can use it exactly like this, or I can convert it into a synopsis and tell it that I want it to frame the synopsis in a completely different framework. It is up to you as the writer how you want to see your specific story broken up. Now, I could also ask it. So, the individual who said that you're having difficulty with pinpointing which one of your lines goes where, ask the AI to assist you with that, and then after a while, it will become second nature to know which one goes where. At this time, are there any questions before I begin to show you how to break this out into chapter summaries? Now, keep in mind, chapter summaries, before I would ever go into my chapter summary, I would still make sure that this was fully fleshed. I cannot fully flesh this out in 1 hour. I can't flesh it out in two. It would take me several hours. And then after I was done fleshing that out and had it where I wanted it, then I would begin to flesh out the actual overall chapter outline, and then from the chapter outline, I would go into the story beats. But I would have to, each one of those stages, I would have to go through and make sure that the content was solid. As you can see, it's giving me all of my storylines. If you take a look at this, here's my A story, the fight against the cartel, my relationship, which is my B story. Then we have a C story here. Usually I put my antagonist in there. We have corruption in the legal system. We have the underbelly. So if you take a look at this, it is tied to specific characters. So here is my antagonist, and it's giving me more information. But I would have to go ahead and drill down into that, because right up here, Letitia is the woman that he is going to have a relationship with. And this woman right here, Elena, is probably the businesswoman and the web of corruption. Things center around her. So she seems untouchable, and she's really masked right there. So it shows me all the things that occur as a result of that thread with that storyline. So I'm going to ask it to write. So I did ask it to write me a synopsis that I can use to tell an AI about this concept. Now, why did I do that? Because I feel that it's important for me to make sure that my content is going to be solid enough for me to talk to an AI. While this is doing that, let's go in and play inside of Story Engine. Notice how I have nothing at all filled out. I'm actually going to come over here to the outline, and let's go ahead and grab one of my other prompts while this one is playing, because it'll be a little bit easier for you to see something that I'm fleshing out here. Let's do, since we did the psychological on the other side, do we want to do an alien invasion, or do we want to do a techno? Let's see. Don't have the techno in here yet. So let's go back up. We will go ahead and do the alien invasion. I'm going to grab this information. Now, I have been having some issues with Sudowrite with the changes that they did. Sometimes the outline does not give me all the information that I'm looking for. Notice how I just put that whole thing in here. To this date, I do not know how long this field is. I don't know how many characters, how many words it will physically take, but I can tell you I have dropped frameworks like this along with detailed backstories, and it has actually done really well. Write out the following story concept, the following story synopsis. Please generate in non-JSON format. Give it a title, genre. Now, why am I doing that in here? Because in Claude and in GPT-4, I tend to find that it works really well for me, and I don't have to put that in there. But when I'm playing inside of Sudowrite, I have to put that information in here. How come in the rewrite and not in the outline spot? Because I'm going to make it generate an outline for me. Now, if I were to take this information and put it, say, in the brain dump, I could put this information in the brain dump, but I only have 800 words to work with. Over here, if I'm plain, I have 1,700 words to work with up here at the top. So I'm going to use the outline section. This is how I use Sudowrite when I am generating. So I'm going to ask it to give me a tagline, genre. I'm going to ask it to also name and to provide and fill out all entries of the framework. And let's say that pro tag is Nick. And let's just leave it at that and see what it does. Now, I can't do anything with the rewrite. Notice how it is grayed out. I can't do anything at all. I have to come up here and even just A opens up the card for me to be able to hit rewrite. Now, why do I do this? I do this because it gives me that basic core information. The only issue that I run into whenever I am plotting here within the outline is that I have to make sure that I'm going through this information. I am making sure that it is as sharp and detailed as I need. If I need to add additional content, I will do that here inside of the card itself before I ever go back in to prompt it to give me chapters. As you can see, it's still giving me information. It is giving me a first and a last name. It really likes the name Ava. It did not give me a first and last name here, but we can prompt the system to give us more details. It is giving me my A, B, and C story. They are very vague. Remember how much we fleshed out our story inside of GPT-4? That's one of the reasons why I like to do all the fleshing out. Now, in the future, Sudowrite is working on having a chat function that will follow your story. That is still in beta, but once they release that, I think that many of you who like to stay just in Sudowrite might find that to be a really helpful tool. Now, keep in mind that my outline could have been a total of 1,700 words. It only spit out 579. Yes, the prompt was empty. No, we are dealing with a different story. Somebody asked if we're dealing with the same story. It is a different one because somebody wanted to know how to bring it from beginning to end. So I'm showing you how you can use the framework here. We can open up another one with our other framework that we're working on in GPT to show you that as well. So this is a brand new, this is how you can use a template here, how you can use the rewrite here. Now, one of the things that I don't like about down here in the rewrite, which the team is actually working on, is that they are going to eventually give us a history so that we can see what our prompts were. And somebody just asked what the other boxes have. So I have nothing to the right and I have absolutely nothing to the left. I am only prompting within the outline. And why am I prompting in the outline? Because the outline uses GPT-4. Since it's using 4, it does not give me vague information. I tend to shy away from 3.5. It can work great, but you really have to wrestle it because it doesn't stay on task as easily as version 4 does. Now, I am going to prompt this to give me, now we do have a character list. Clearly, we have our characters here, which I can go in and I can grab this main character list right here. So let me go up and grab my characters. I'm going to plug my characters right over here, just so that I have them. And yes, there will be a replay. Now I am going to use a prompt. Now this prompt says that we have a character list, which we do. And we know that we have all these characters. Our story is I'm going to say it's a 30 chapter, and it is an alien We're going to instruct it to do the chapter by chapter outline. I am identifying what I want it to run it as. I am asking it to have alternating POVs. If you don't want a love interest, then you would change that and you would take that out to remove the love interest and only have one POV. I can say 5 beats, I can say 6 beats, I can say 10 beats. These beats primarily right now are just for my summary. I noticed that if I have at least 5 beats, it does well. If I'm going to only have, say, 12 story beats later on that I'm going to generate my prose off of, then I feel that 5 beats in my summary for those primary beats helps me to be able to flesh that content out. If I know that my story beats are going to have more than say 12 to 16, then yes, I would want to go ahead and move those forward. Somebody asked, why don't you show us what your prompts and rewrite do with the outline you did for the class? I can definitely do that, but right now I'm showing this from beginning to end, and then I'll pull those in. All I'm going to do here is go ahead and I'm going to change this to A. Because remember, if we generated it inside of GPT, then that is not a brand new, fresh generation inside of Sudowrite. So I want to show people that you can generate something from scratch in Sudowrite, and you can generate something from scratch inside of ChatGPT 4. I will bring in the content from 4 in here. So let's go ahead and hit rewrite. Notice how I have dictated that I want 30 chapters. I want 5 primary beats per chapter. I am telling it what kind of content that I want, and all of these prompts will be available to you. I am asking it to use this format to show me. Right now, I want it to be 5 numbered beats because these are the primary, and I'm wanting specific descriptor words. So now I'm going to ask it to rewrite. So it is giving me my title, my tagline, my genre, the tone, the themes, so that I have all that information up front. It's giving me some of my motifs. It is also giving me my chapter 1 with 5 numbered beats. It is letting me know who is in that chapter, the setting, the characters, the tone. It's giving me my primary beats. So each one of these primary beats is what I would use to generate my actual story prose off of. So I have my 5 primary beats, but I'm going to generate anywhere from, say, 12 to 14, 16, whatever beats that I want. Now, is it going to give me all 30 right here? No, but I'm going to prompt it to continue. And if the LLMs are behaving themselves, then it will continue. Now, why do I specify who my characters are, the time of day, and the setting? Because I need that specific to each chapter. That way, the LLM, the AI knows exactly who is in my chapter. Now, this little paragraph right here is more of just the AI saying, hey, I did my job. Here's this. But if you want to keep going, you have to keep prompting me. So I'm going to come down to the rewrite section, and I'm going to state, please continue where you left off on chapter 5 and follow all formatting requests and generate until you reach chapter 30. Now, I'm wanting it to continue where it left off on chapter 5, and I'm going to tell it to go ahead and rewrite. Now, it is going to write over this, but we can always recall that information inside of the history. Now, it is going to give me additional information again. Remember, it is some of this content may change depending on the chapters that it is generating. So keep that in mind. Some of this information may change, but it's being directed by the chapters. It's letting me know that chapters 1 through 4 as provided in the original outline. So those are still there. They are in my history, which I can grab at any time. but here's my information. It's starting with chapter 5, and then it wants to give me this. So when it starts giving me this information, I still have to do 6 through 29. This is one of the reasons why I tend to use GPT-4 whenever I am doing this, because sometimes it'll just keep giving me the content and sometimes it'll just do this. So it just ate words to give me this information. Then that means that I need to say, continue where you left off on chapter 5. This time it's going to be chapter 6. And one of the things that you can do, if it does not give you the next chapters in line, you can say, please continue where you left off on chapter 6, then write chapters 7, 8, and 9. Keep in mind, this is a 30 chapter outline, and then rewrite. Our world building, global cities, military installations. We now still have human resistance traders. Okay, so it started with my number 5 again. Nicole, you just said that there's a bug with the rewrite box.
Yes, ma'am. It's been happening for a month or so now. So I just want people to be aware if they're using the rewrite box, it might randomly stop at times as well.
Okay. So that seemed to work this time, telling it to do 5, it did give me 5 again, but it also gave me 6. But this is how you would prompt it to keep giving you the outline beats. Now, if I were to activate a card with this, I would need to remove the information up here. And this information, I would go ahead and take off and I could put in my brain dump. So we're already on chapter 8. Now, keep in mind the word count, it really should go up to 1,700, but it doesn't always do that. Sometimes it will stop at 800, 900 words, sometimes only 500. I think the most that I've had it hit has been 18 something, and it actually went above the 1,700 word count when that one occurred. Now, notice how it's telling me chapters 10 through 29 would follow a similar structure. I could keep going. Oh, Nicole, in your rewrite, you actually got over 3,000 inside of the outline.
We didn't even use rewrite. We were generating the outline and it just kept going. We loved it.
Oh, nice. That is really good. I got all the way up to chapter 9, and then all I would do is keep prompting it. I would change this to 10, and then I'd probably go ahead and keep that same process and say 10, 11, 12, 13, because I noticed that if I find a prompt that's working, I continuously use that one over and over again because repetition works well with the LLM. So let me go ahead and close out of this one. And I am going to create a new just so that I can bring in the information from what we are playing with inside of the thriller. Now, here is my synopsis. How do I feel about dialogue? I think that it doesn't generate enough dialogue. I actually get pretty good dialogue in mine, but then I also prompt it to do dialogue. It has this information right here, and that's okay. And I'm okay with that. But I'm thinking that I want to take some of this information and I'm going to use it inside of the program. I'm going to take maybe this storyline right here, and I'm going to go in and fill in some of my cards. So I'm going to come over here to my brain dump. I'm going to fill in information here just so that I have it. Keep in mind that when we are looking at our outline, it only pulls from genre, synopsis, and characters. So that means that if I'm going to use the rewrite outline, I could store some information inside of the genre, the synopsis, and the character list. My character list is only 1,700 words, and my synopsis is 800. I'm limited to those two totals. And between the two, I can add that number up and I can store information in either card. Now, just because it's my character list doesn't mean that I can't put other stuff in there. At times, I will put setting in there. I will put specific history or lore inside of my character list if I don't have enough room in my synopsis. Now, why am I putting information in here if I'm not going to hit the generate button over here on my card? Because it's still going to pull from those two areas, and it just gives me additional information to pull from. I can put different information in my synopsis, my characters, and I can load the rewrite outline with additional content too. So let's go ahead and play with that right now. I am going to go back up and let's take a look. This outline better right here. So I definitely want some of this information. So let's go and take that, and I want to put some of that into my character. Let's see how long it is. That is only 300 and let's see, 396. So I'm going to store that there for just a moment. And now I'm going to go back. And again, I will put them in either one of those cards. I am going to grab this extended synopsis and I'm going to go back in, and that's what I'm going to put here. Keep in mind that this is only 566 words out of 800, so I could still put more information inside of this card if I wanted to. I could definitely put more inside of my character list. So I'm going to go back in and I need to take a look at my characters. Let's see, that's the antagonist. We have the synopsis down at the bottom that it ran. I like this synopsis better. And I'm going to go up and take a look. Here are some of my character items. I need to know how long this main character list is. Now, I can do a shorter version of this list. I can definitely do that. But for now, let's take all of this. I'm going to take this and I'm going to go back in. I'm going to add, right now I only have 474 words here. I'm going to plug that in here. This is just for my holding. I know that I have this information here for my characters in case I need to move information around. Right now, all I'm doing is storing information, and I may move things around. I just need everything on the same page right now. And the only other thing that I may want to go in and pull is we had information. So let's take a look. We have all of these storylines. There was some information that I wanted that was very specific. I want to make sure that some of this information here is still used. So I am going to grab elements of this. Now, granted, if I was doing this 100% and I knew all of my information had been completely scrubbed and I knew that all of my information matched from my character list to my synopsis to my A through E stories, all of that, I would have to make sure all the information matched. I'm going to take out this information here. I am going to take out the log line and I'm going to leave in this information right there. And I'm going to go and I'm going to plug this information here for holding. Now, why am I doing that? Because whenever I'm writing beats later, I may need some of this information when I'm writing my beats, just for me for a quick glance. So now that I have some of this information in here, I'm actually going to go and grab my prompt. Remember the prompt that we used a while ago? And we wanted it to give us some specific information. We can definitely use that same prompt that we used earlier right here. But what I'm going to have to do is tell it, here's the story, synopsis, and concept details to use. Now, remember earlier, I really didn't give it much information. I just asked it to go ahead and write that. We have a character list. Our characters, we do have a character list. Now, do I want to leave this information in here? Now, I could definitely do that. I do have some character information in here, but do I have enough character information? I'm going to go and look. Here is my synopsis. Here in my character list, I have listed my A, B, and C and D story. So I still need to do something with my characters. I want my main characters. So I'm going to grab just the first part of my character list, and I'm going to transfer that information here. So I know that I'm only at 476 out of 700. I'm going to go and get my character number 2. I'm not putting the descriptions in there. I can manually write that in because I don't want a description on every page. Now, if you prefer having the description, then by all means, put that information in there. Now, sometimes whenever I'm bringing stuff in, I will not put anything at all in the cards, but because you want to see the beats being generated here within Sudowrite, that's the only reason why I am filling out my cards. That's why I have brain dump, synopsis, and my character list filled out. Otherwise, I would have nothing in here if I was bringing it 100% already created in ChatGPT 4. Let's go ahead and tell it to write the outline as instructed. Now, this is a great way to do it if you have a really long lore. Say you have a whole magical world and you need to ingrain that in your outline. And say you already have an outline in here, but it didn't pick stuff up, you can actually hit the revision button and put your lore or the rules of your world inside of the rewrite. Now, remember, all I have to do is one character opens it up and then rewrite. Now, notice, do you see that I didn't give it anything here? I didn't give it any chapters. Now, I could tell it 30, I could tell it 10, I could tell it 9. If you leave it blank like this, it is going to basically scrub your content and then give you the number of chapters that it thinks that you need. So if you have a specific chapter count in mind, make sure that you're adding that. So again, here's my chapter 2. It gives me who my characters are, the setting, the tone. It gives me my primary beats. Now you can also prompt it if you already have your primary beats in place. You can put your chapter outline with those primary beats down here. You could put all that down here at the very bottom and use this prompt. And then you could tell it to give you 14 beats or 10 beats per chapter for your story beats. I've done that as well. And just like before, all you would do is continue to prompt it. It has left off with chapter 5. So then I would just go ahead and prompt it like I did before and tell it to continue to give me those specific chapters. I would ask it to continue with chapter 6 through this time it gave me 5 of them, but I'd probably try and get it to give me 5, but it may not give me a total of 5. But I would try and ask it to give me chapters 6 through 10. Do you want to change beats from 14 to 5? So I don't go to 14 beats. It automatically gave me the shorter ones, and that was okay. It automatically, one of the things that I have found with Sudowrite and with other LLMs, when you have been using it, it seems to pick up some logic in the content that you keep giving. Now, where did it get the 5 beats from? It got it from right here. Do you see where I highlighted in my list? Because I have 5 beats. So it took the direction there and it ignored the 14 beats here. I would if you want more than just these beats. Now, if I wanted more than this, then what I would end up doing is taking this information, because what I have is too vague in my summary, and the summary just isn't beefy enough to generate a total of 14 beats or not even 12 beats sometimes. I would take this information right here and I would go down here to the bottom where I have all of my premise information. I would remove this, or I could add my content here. And I could tell it to only pull information as needed to resolve any conflict. Use the beats provided. And I would have to do this for every single run of beats that I have if I wanted it to do the 14 beats. And that's another reason why I go to GPT. Yes. And you do have to be careful, like you said, with the header right here, because if you go in and do your beats on the other side and you go to generate prose, then yes, it will mess you up. Let's come back up to the top. And I have this information right here. Our story is, and I'm going to say, this time I'm going to say it is a 30 chapter. And remember how I changed the chapter name and everything here? I did not do that this time, but it automatically knew what genre my body of work was from the information that I provided. So I'm going to ask it to do a chapter by chapter. This time, I do not want it to contain 5 beats. I want it to contain, let's say, 14 beats in number form. We could do 12 beats if we wanted to, but I start with the 5 or 6 primary beats if I'm going to go more than 10 or 12 beats, because I need that additional meat in there to have more beats than 12. Here's my information for my setting and stuff. And here are my primary, as it goes down, primary beats. Let's see what it does. Write out the outline as instructed using the framework below. Now, I generally do not prompt it this way, so let's see what it does. And it started with 6. So I will have to prompt it to go back to work with chapter 1 and give me the 14 beats. So all it did was continue. So here I'll need to be clear that I need it to give me chapter 1 with 14 beats. So again, the LLM doesn't always adhere, but it will do the 14 here. Let's let it finish and then we will do that. Excuse me. While that is generating, let's do the same thing over here in chat. Now, somebody had asked, how do you know how many chapters? Why don't we do this first? What tense? So we can ask the LLM if you are unsure, ask why. So again, it's suggesting 25 to 30 chapters. It will give you information on, so there you go. It gives you multiple items that you can take a look at. It will let you know in summary, it's thinking that it should be 25 to 30 chapters, third person, limited POV, past tense. Switch POVs as the narrative demands, so that you know whose head you're in. Now, I am going to ask it the question about first and the other characters in third. It says, yes, it's not uncommon for novels to utilize a mixed POV, especially in thrillers. You will find that with, I believe it is James Patterson's The Murder Club has that. So there again, one of the reasons why I generally go with 30 is because that's what I was using prior to AI. Yes, so your spy thrillers can be a lot longer, and you would really need to work up the definitely make sure that your information is fully fleshed out. The thing about your spy thrillers, how many words per chapter on average do you get? I generally, some of the spy thriller ones that I have read have some of the shorter, punchier chapters to them rather than some of the longer chapters that you might see in some of the psychological thrillers. And on average, how long are your books, word count wise? 2,000 to 3,000 words. So I'm going to ask it to write out the framework using the chapter outline, following the framework below. But I am going to ask it to make it a 30 chapter, and it is the thriller. I can instruct it to go chapter by chapter. I can ask it at this point, I can do 5 if I know that I'm going to have multiple, maybe over 14 beats per summary. Once I go to fully flesh it out, then I might want to change this to 6 beats just for my primary. And again, the reason why I do this first is so that I know that my structure has enough meat in it to sustain it whenever I go in to ask it to give me the 14 beats or 16 beats later. And notice how it gives me the same information. Look, it changed his name again. It is now Rios. And this is one of the reasons why I tell you that you need to keep track of your characters' names, because it will keep making those changes. Now, notice how I have this information here. I have 6 of them. Now, if I were fleshing this out into the story beats to generate, then I could use this same framework right here, but instead of using the 6, I would turn it into 14. Here is where I would also tell it whenever it stops generating, I would go ahead and tell it that I need it to continue from where it left off on chapter XYZ, and that it needs to be beat, I don't know, 7 or beat 4 or 3, whichever one it leaves off on. So in this case, it ended on chapter 3. It did all of chapter 3. So I have 3, so I need 4. And so please continue where you left off on and left off. This time I'm going to say left off and write chapters 4, 5, 6, and beyond. Now I would do this until I get all 30 done. Now, once I get all 30 of these done, then I would go through and then I would flesh out each one of these sections into 14 beats each. So when this round runs, I am going to grab that first chapter and I'm going to show you how to break that out into 14 story beats. Now, again, why do I duplicate this? Because I find that if I ask it to give me 14 or 16 beats right off the bat, it does not have enough information and my beats will be really vague. So that's why I ask for my primary beats. Now, does that mean that my primary beats are 100% good and good to go? No. Again, we are limited by time, and everything that you see in those beats, I would have gone in and read and fleshed out and made sure that they were solid before I move into doing my story beats. That is not something that you can do from beginning, from conception all the way to generation, all within an hour or 2 hours, because the book that you generate would not be solid. So here I am going to go back in and it's a thriller. I could get more specific if I wanted to, but remember, the thread has all my information in it. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to change the 5 to 14 numbered beats. Every summary should begin with a hook. And so every one of those, I am going to come down to the bottom. I'm going to list this as an A just to save myself some trouble later. Oh, I can definitely write 95,000 words in an hour or less, but I would not want to write this one because it's not fully fleshed out. I would need to make sure that my body of work, I had fleshed it out whole 100%. And I would not trust that I could go in, create something this intricate, and do that within an hour and start generating and have a full book by the end of that hour or 2 that would be cohesive enough. I would need to go back and forth, flesh out all of my beats to ensure that it was solid. So on this, I definitely want to have it produce the content again. I'm going to leave it with 14 here, and I'm going to do 14 right here. One thing I am going to remind it up at the top, please add in the POV character name as instructed. And yes, I know that was not you asking that specific question. It was a user that had asked the question about writing the 95,000 word. But yeah, let me tell you, the AI can really churn out some words in Story Engine. So I'm going to go ahead and go up and I'm going to grab, say, pretend that we have generated all of our beats. If everything is the way that we want it, you're going to go in, copy this content and you're going to come back down underneath your framework. You're going to say, here are the beats to use, however you want to word that. And then you're going to tell it to go. And we're going to stop it. So this is one of the things that I like about ChatGPT 4. I can stop it and then I can tell it to continue. At least Michael's name hasn't changed again. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is that one, this is an action. He has arrived at the police department. He sets up his new office. That's all action. There are flashes of his tarnished reputation. Unless you can trust the AI to give you a montage, that could cause issues. We have an introduction, which that is action. That would be fine. They discuss a pending case. That's fine. But what is the case about? Do you want to trust the AI to know what that case is about? I would flesh out number 3 and number 5. Let's see, he remembers this individual and from a shared past experience. So now it is 2 and it is number 5 and 6. So take a look at your beats. Some of these would have to be fleshed out. JC, looking at the content, I'm still not happy with it. And I would still need to play with it and force it to give me what I want. Or I would type that information myself. This is number 7. You can see distressed officer definitely is active. The warning, that's active. Number 9, she shares her doubts, but what are those doubts? That is vague. And you might want to stipulate what those doubts are. Anytime a character has a flashback, that is definitely a time to go in and maybe write something about it so that the AI stays on task. How can you expect it to have the same flashback that you want if you don't tell it what that flashback is each time? So again, some of these are going to be very vague because they are not fully fleshed. So if you are processing beats like this that have things like flashbacks or introspection and they are not showing action, then that becomes an issue. Revise chapter 1 to only have active action beats. Avoid introspection, flashbacks, and rumination. Only show what can be seen, similar to what one sees on a television. Show the action, don't tell. And I will go back and forth. Now, that was really vague for me to give to it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to follow it 100%. But here we know that there's a knock on the door. Somebody enters, they discuss a pending case. I don't know what the case is. We're going to trust the AI to do that. And again, it took out that introspection. And we want to make sure that we're doing that because if it is all internal and in the head, you can't really show that action. But you can write that deeper POV into your body of work with a framework for the prose. So I am going to grab all of chapter 1 right here, and I'm going to hold on to that and place that right down here. And if you saw the segment that I did yesterday, then you will know that I had a very detailed framework that I like to use. Let's see, we got to chapter 10 here, and for the story engine story that we were doing, we would need to prompt it again to do the next chapters, say 11 through 15. And then you would continue to do 16 through 20, 21 through 25, so on until you reached 30. And then once you got that, then you would either go ahead and flesh out your beats here by hitting the generation. And to do that, you would have to open up your card. And now that my card is open, I can tell you I have 5 parts. I could add these cards and I could generate beats. I would generate beats straight off of what is in here, or I would ask it to give me the beats through my outline rewrite. And why do I do that? Because everything in my outline is, if they haven't changed it, everything in the outline is generated from ChatGPT 4. Everything inside of your beat card here when it generates is 3.5. So you would be going from version 4, which is more robust, to something that might give you some vague beats. And that's one of the reasons why I tend to like to use either Outline to do my beats, or I will use ChatGPT 4. Now I am going to go in, and from yesterday's body of work, I'm actually going to go in and grab my little framework. Let's see. I'm just going to take this straight out of here. And I'm going to show you how to take this same framework that we used yesterday. This is the story element one. This is the one that has all the percentage, backstory, action, tension, dialogue, setting, character development. I do have a generic blank one, but if you are working in the system and you're using the same one over and over again to wrap it with your content, then you're going to keep telling the LLM to wrap the chapter. Now, keep in mind down here at the bottom, I have put in my beats. So I have my chapter 1. I'm going to tell it, use these beats to wrap into the framework. So I'm asking it to wrap the information. As you can see, I said, please wrap chapter 1 story beats into the thriller crime detective framework below. Strip out all story content related to Benjamin Wyatt and Eliza Gentry, and build the framework around the characters listed in the provided beats for chapter 1. And I'm going to send that off. Now, as you can see that the framework had a POV character, which was Benjamin. It had the sensory details. This is from a completely different story. I am recycling my content here. This is the easiest way that I have found to be able to reuse some of my templates, by recycling them. Again, I am going to come down. Let's take a look at what it is writing for me. I'm going to stop it and make it do it one more time until it did not listen. As you can see, it is a back and forth tug of war. And there it goes. So I know this is chapter 1. The POV is Michael. It's in past tense. I know the day. It's Monday. I know the time. I know who my characters are. I know that the location and setting. And it's given me all of my story elements, my introduction, my save the cat, my cliffhangers. And so I am going to take this content right here while it is giving me my next content. I am going to plug that in inside of my Sudowrite here. It's going to the right card. Now I could send these into beats, but I prefer to use the beats that I already have inside of story and inside of ChatGPT 4. Now, do I have to put it up here? I don't have to. I already have it here. And I could say in his first person, and it already has past tense right here. And that's all of the information that I'm going to give it right here, unless I want to tell it to use specific language. So now let's go back in, see what it has given us. And we have our percentages and we have our setting. So I'm going to go and I'm going to grab from here down. I'm going to grab some of this information. I am going to take that back in. I'm going to add that here. And there we go. And let's go get some beats. I'm going to go and grab my beats right here. Notice I have the hook is 1, save the cat beat is 6, and 14 has my cliffhanger. I'm going to place a 1 right here under my first beat. And I'm going to scroll up and just do a bird's eye view to make sure that I don't have anything listed here that I shouldn't. The other thing that I'm going to grab is this information up here, even though it is of my framework, I notice that sometimes the AI will abide by it, sometimes it doesn't. So I do like to put that right here, just as an extra, hey, pay attention. Now I do want to show you, do you see how we have ABC and one of the users said, hey, make sure that you don't have a numbered list? If I have a 1 right here and I go down to run this prose, I should be checking my beat because that 1 basically tells the LLM that is my first beat. So it is contingent on reading that number 1, which means that it will potentially give me 102 beats. And I don't want that. Notice how all those extra, like the curly little bracket parenthesis, that is a beat all to itself. So pay attention to that. Sounds good, Nicole. So I am going to go ahead and kill this, put it as an A. We don't have any other numbers except for the number 1 on that first beat. Each one of these has a carriage return. So it automatically knows that there are going to be 14 beats here. I don't have to number them. And if you notice, with that one change of turning Michael back to an A, it has all my header information here. And here are my beats. And I am going to use most accurate. Now, if I wanted it grittier, then I would have put up at the very top up here, I could have put that I wanted it under the tone. I could have put that I wanted it to be gritty, raw. Use colloquial language. If you want it to have some cursing in it, definitely use colloquial language. And notice how between my strides, it ends here with dialogue. And somebody said that they didn't get a whole lot of dialogue. I tend to get dialogue in mine, but it may be the way that I prompt it. Now, again, if I wanted it to be grittier, then I would have to use descriptor words that made it have more gritty or a grunge feel to it. I would need to make sure that my descriptive words matched the tone that I want the story to be. Any questions? I know that we covered a lot today, guys. If you have a question, unmute. Good. I'm glad that was helpful. I'm glad that helped you. And again, notice how I'm not getting those. It's not trying to tie everything up because of the prompting. So if I can't go out of this page, but if you go to somebody asked how to get to Slack. If you go into your Sudowrite proper page, you'll see a little question mark with a circle around it. Click on that and it'll say there'll be quite a few things that you can pick from, but one of them will say join the Slack community. Click on that and it'll take you right into the Slack. And yes, I'll be providing the prompts as well. Yeah, my head was exploding too when I first started using AI. It's still I'm blown away by what the AI can do. And I feel like I only know a fraction of what it can do. So I'm learning new stuff every day. Which category? I will probably post it in the same area that I did before. I'd have to go in and look. I'm not sure what area. I might have done it under tricks and tips is that number 5? Yeah, tips and tricks. Again, I will go ahead and post that information out in Slack. It will also be available on the YouTube channel, and I will have this video up probably sometime tonight. It takes a while for me to process content, and then I will have the templates and information out there as well. I do want to thank y'all for attending. If there are no other questions, then just know that you can find us inside of the Slack community. You can also go and find us on the actual Discord that CC and I are in all of the time. The YouTube channel is AI Writer Connection, and I believe somebody linked that earlier. If not, you will find a link of that inside of Slack and the Discord. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to wrap up today's session. As we do wrap up, take a moment to reflect on the journey that we've taken today. The narrative we crafted is the child of human imagination, simply shaped using a chisel of AI devoid of consciousness or intent. It is merely a resource, our resource. It's a powerful, dynamic one. And yes, and as always, it requires that human touch. It cannot create on its own. In an age where the role of AI in creative fields is debated and often misunderstood, it's crucial to remember AI doesn't diminish the writer. Instead, it can elevate, refine, and enhance the writer's vision when used responsibly and when used intelligently. As we forge ahead in our writing journeys, may we utilize all the tools at our disposal, including AI, always valuing the irreplaceable spark of the human mind and creativity. Until next time, bye bye, guys.